Hey everybody, it's Reverend Will, the senior minister at First Christian Church here in Fulton, Missouri. Glad you could join us for this week's Midweek Devotion. It starts out with a couple of questions. What do you do when your plans for the future have to be put on hold? What do you do when life takes a sudden shift you weren't expecting? What do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air because the life you are living is nowhere close to the life you imagined for yourself? Do you break out the world's tidiest violin and throw yourself a pity party? Do you don sackcloth and ashes, mournfully parading the devastation the world has brought on your life? Do you dive deep into your music collection, putting those songs of loss and regret on repeat? That's the question Jeremiah sought to answer in his letter to his exiled compatriots. Left weeping by the rivers of Babylon, the Judeans had been kicked out of their promised land for failing to live up to their side of the covenant with Yahweh, our God. They'd not taken care of the widow and orphan. Bible speak for the vulnerable population of their time. They'd sought after other gods, throwing away what made them special and gave their community meaning, more than just church hopping to the newest megachurch. They cared more about their bottom lines and their accounts than their faithfulness. And so, God gave them over to their sin. To the people, it was a tragedy. More than just a home, they lost their purpose, their identity. If they weren't God's people, then who were they? What hope could they possibly have if exile and ruin are what God had in store for them? What future could be imagined when all they could see is foreign soil? What were they to do when everything seemed so futile and barren? Don't tell me you've never asked that question before, maybe even now. Everything sucks. What could I possibly do? One faithful idea is to give voice to those feelings, not holding them in. Psalm 137 is our guide in this regard, which says, alongside Babylon streams, there we sat down, crying because we remembered Zion. We hung our lyres up in the trees there because that's where our captors asked us to sing. In essence, it's saying it's okay to feel your feelings. Far from a pity party, expressing your emotions is a testimony to the pain and loss you are feeling. We know we don't worship a stoic God who wants wants us to suffer all the slings and arrows with a stiff upper lip. When your hope is slipping, it's a faithful thing to cry out and lament what is no more. But Jeremiah also had a different idea of how the faithful should respond, one that doesn't just stay by the rivers of Babylon. So he puts pen to paper and sends a letter. He's not there with the people, having not been deemed elite enough to be carted off, but he knows their plight. He served God and God's word long enough to have some thoughts on what they should do while the future looks bleak and their emotions are swirling the drain. Indeed, Jeremiah writes them as one who speaks on God's behalf, providing grace in the midst of despair. And here's the thing. God's word to God's people isn't crazy or out of left field. It might be surprising, but only because we usually want magnificent, strange, or outlandish ideas to prevail. But Jeremiah doesn't offer that. What Jeremiah tells the people is surprising because it is so normal. He tells them to live normal lives. He says, this is your new normal, at least for the foreseeable future, so act like it. Do what you would have done if tragedy had never come. He says, build houses and live in them. Grow gardens and eat the food. Get married and have babies. Create a life that allows your kids to do the same. Don't pine for what once was, or really wasn't because you now have nostalgia glasses on, but make life good for where you are now. In essence, he says, do the normal things of everyday life. This isn't to act as if nothing has happened, but more of a attend to what's right in front of you. Pay attention to the small things and live your life. We don't have to do something particularly meaningful or special. Just put one foot in front of the other and focus on the daily tasks, the ordinary things. The faithful response when plans are dashed, hopes delayed, and tragedy strikes is not gaudy or loud, but steadfast and humble. And funnily enough, it's in those places that God shows up, not in the showy or outlandish, but the ordinary places of life no one really wants to focus on or no one really wants to be. God's office is not when you're at the top of life, but at the end of your rope. God's grace shines through the cracks of our life, those ordinary places. Thanks for joining me for this week's Midweek Devotion. We hope that you have heard this good news. Please like and share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. We are invited to join us for worship on Sunday morning. We gather at 10:30, both in person and online. But if not, our blessing is the same as always. God be with you till we meet again.